Welcome to another episode of Search for the Secret. We have an exciting one for you today as we're bringing you image 12 with verse 10. Now, one of the most exciting things about this one for me is the fact that it's probably the first video I've done that actually is in agreement with the majority of the community that the image and the verse connect and also connect to the same city that most agree with, which is New York. Now, there's obviously differences between where in New York, since New York is quite big. But I think after you see this, that I'm going to put together a strong theory for it being in Inwood Hills Park up at the northernmost part of Manhattan. Now, this is going to be a fun one because we're going to have all sorts of image connections, verse connections, story connections. We're going to answer every Japanese hint that came in the Japanese version. We're going to get into why he chose the different fairy folk that he did. If you know this one, it's connected to the Russian immigration. Basically, we'll get into that in the future, but as you can see, the clock is pointing to 11, and most searchers connect the clocks or the time to the month, and also the story that connects to this particular one is well connected to the Russian immigration. So we're going to have a lot of fun today. I want to get through, I have quite a bit, so let's get moving. Now, Inwood Hills Park, where is this located? This is at the very northernmost part of Manhattan, just below the Bronx. So here's the Bronx. This is the northern part of north of Manhattan, the Bronx. And this is Inwood Hills Park at the northernmost part of Manhattan. Now, very unique part of this particular park is the fact that not only is it highly historical, but it also has the only natural remaining forest and salt marsh in all of Manhattan, the last natural one. And that'll come into some very important pieces as we get a little farther down. But the fact that this also connects to the European colonists and the Native American tribes, in such an amazing way. And we'll dive into that. But as you know, if you are have you done any sort of research into the secret, you'll come to the realization that Byron connected not only the immigration, but also how that immigration of people from all around the world came into the US and Canada and essentially North America to also affect the Native American populations across US and Canada. So not just immigration, but migration and how that affected the native populations. And this particular location has quite the story. So let's get moving forward. Now, we're going to first focus on the image and story connections that are quite obvious when you really see them. Now, the first one I love because it's just so obvious is this particular piece on the sleeve of the woman in the image. Now, the sleeve makes almost a perfect connection to this essentially northernmost part of Manhattan and part of what's called Inwood Hills Park. And we'll get into what this really is in the verse as well in the future. This is not only going to be our starting spot, but it also has quite amazing connections to the verse. And as you can see, it's a bit of an island. Okay, so it has the same shape, almost exactly. I mean, how are you going to get the shape of something like this into the imagery? And we're going to focus in this general area because we're going to find that this piece right here, these right here, this right here, and then a V that you'll see that's in the broader part of the image that will all kind of play into the perfect locations of this park and exactly where they should be connected to the image as well as Inwood Hills Park and the map. Now, somebody shared this with me on Discord. By the way, one of the best places to go, and if you want to really have discussions about the secret, but be ready to be able to defend. Don't get upset if people don't see what you see. I mean, trust me, I'm the alt guy, and nobody agrees with me on probably 95% of stuff. But I'm very confident about it. I'm going to stick with what I've shared, and I hope others will start taking the different path that I've taken, or their own path. That's what this is all about, anyway. That's the best part about this. The true secret and the true treasure for this is, I think from Byron, is just for us to get out, to learn, to get into nature, to learn about the parks and our overall history of these, the great across North America parks that we have, but also, how immigration has affected not only, the countries as a whole, but affected the native populations. But I thought this was a very nice connection. I just turned it upside down, and it looks very similar to a big piece of the park. Now, the most obvious piece, and I've come to find out recently that others have been searching here at Inwood Hills for a while. I thought I was one of the only ones until more recently. I started kind of researching this location in about 2018, and had a chance to get out there with a buddy in 2019. And this piece for Peter Minuit is one of the most obvious to at least consider it, and then we'll get into some different pieces on why. So not only do we have the importance of Manhattan Island, but also the word trinkets, right? This is part of the story. So trinkets traded for Manhattan Island. And if you know Peter Minuit, you know where I'm going with this. So let's just move forward. So at Inwood Hills, you'll come across a boulder that has this plaque. This boulder, I know I'm going to botch this, so my apologies. It's Shorakapach. Once again, probably blowing that. Don't take what I'm saying literally. Got probably very horrific pronouncing of that particular word there. But it's essentially a boulder with a plaque that connects Peter Minuit, who purchased Manhattan Island for trinkets. Now, Peter Minuit was a part of the Dutch East India Company, and he came to Manhattan to essentially make connections with native populations, and ended up purchasing Manhattan for what is trinkets today. And not only do we see the word Peter Minuit in the story, in The Secret, but we also see the word trinkets. So let's keep moving forward. As I mentioned, Dutch East India Company, and he was responsible for purchasing of Manhattan Island, who he met with the Lenape indigenous people within Manhattan. And I don't even think they actually controlled that area at the time. And as most people understand, the rights to land was almost something not even understood by native populations, and being able to purchase land, especially for trinkets, was something that was so foreign to them that they didn't realize really what they were doing. And in fact, it was not even, from what I've read, it's not even their particular land that they had. It was another tribe that was in that area, but they were close to it. But anyway, so here's what the boulder looks like today. This is a picture I took when I was out there. As you can see, it has the plaque on it. And we'll get into the importance of this in verses and imagery, but the next picture is a good one for imagery perspective. In the image the neck of the woman actually makes quite a connection to the same shape as the boulder. Now, why is this boulder so important? Well, this marks the spot that the particular transaction took place. It didn't used to be a boulder, though, and we'll show you what it used to be. But this is the marker today. And most people just walk right by it, ride their bikes right by it, pay no attention to it. You barely see it. You barely even notice it unless if you stop to take a look to see what it is. And that has an important piece to the verse. So, where are we going to be going? Well, once again, this is on the shape that's essentially on the sleeve of the woman. We're going to be following the main path, okay, which is a very slender path. It's not very big, especially when you get into these areas here. But the rock or the boulder is right here, okay, which we just talked about. And the next place we're going to be looking at is right here, which is the rock formations and Indian caves. Now, it's interesting it says rock formations and it doesn't say Indian caves because there are some amazing rocks over here, but it's actually more known for the fact that these were Indian caves areas. And it's kind of fun to go in them. And the interesting thing about them is it's not where they lived when they were here in the park. They actually would store food and supplies and different things here, keep it cool, probably during the summertime. But this whole map is very interesting because, as I mentioned, we're going to be coming here. Okay, this is our starting point essentially, and I'll show you why once we get to the verse. Then we're going to be essentially passing this rock formation. There's going to be a V, okay, that goes east. This is north, south, east, west. It's going to be a V. And then there's going to be something over here we're going to talk about in just a minute. And then we will see on the woman that these are all lined up perfectly for where the map is and how they are set up to be on the woman. Let's keep moving forward. But this is where we're going to end up. This is where the fun takes place, dragons and all. So, remember I said there's rock formations? That's where we're going next, at the caves. Well, this is on essentially right where, right next to the sleeve, where it should be, of the woman on her dress. And these are highlighted. Now, what do we see as we're on our path? We see some very interesting rock formations, right? This one looks just like this. This one looks just like this. It's kind of hard to see because we're zoomed in a little too far here. But we'll see it. But this has been around for a long time. And then, as you can see, this is back in 1923. And it shows the Indian caves and the unique rock formations that are right in this particular location. To celebrate and to, the reopening, I guess, if you can say, Inwood Hills with a focus on the fact that there were native populations here when they brought back certain parts of the park to highlight the native population that had been there for many, many years, hundreds and maybe thousands of years before anybody else had been there, and use this park in a way up to, I think, the 17th century, before it was being called, I don't know if colonization is the right way to say it, but probably. But they brought out a princess, a Cherokee princess. So this is back in 1936, when they kind of reopened it and standing right there in one of the caves. Now we know the importance to the story. This is the first image that you come to. And you have underneath what looks kind of like maybe an oak tree or maybe some other type of tall tree, you have a Native American listening to a fairy folk. So we know the importance of the native population. So any place that we should be going to should have some aspect, and all my videos that I show have an aspect and show the importance of those locations to the Native uh, Americans, to the native tribe that are at that particular site and how they were affected by immigration. By the way, if you have a chance, check out some of my other work. If you like what I'm showing here, give us a like, join our YouTube group. We'll get into that just a little bit so you can see all our videos, including this one and others. But we do appreciate any support in that sort of respect to get the word out. We do take a different path, and I say we because I've had a lot of family members and friends help me in different aspects of this. But I do take the same approach with every single video, and that approach is wherever you go, it has to have high imagery connections. It has to connect to the verse in amazing ways. You have to be able to answer the Japanese questions, which are additional clues. You need to be able to connect the immigration fairy folk, and essentially, you, you need to identify similar parks and locations that follow that same theme. And if you don't, you're missing the whole point of the secret, which is a story about immigration and migration. So if you don't have the native population piece where you are trying to find it, I think you are looking completely in the wrong direction and at the wrong sites. But that's just my opinion. Go look wherever you want. Have fun. Have a blast. So a very unique place, as we've already been talking about this. This is thing on the little bit of a different angle, so it's kind of hard to see. But this is the rock. This is the Indian caves. This is what was on the sleeve. All right, and we're taking this path, coming through here. Now, this area in here is called the Clove, and there are two main things over here that are very important. Okay, one that we'll see in imagery, and I'll get to that in just a second, is whaleback rock. So whaleback rock is this rock right here, and I took a picture of it while I was out there. But why does that connect? Why is that important? Well, talked about the V, right? The rocks are down here. You have the over here. It's cut off. We'll show it in a little bit, but over here is where you have that very unique islandish type of formation that is on the sleeve, and then you have this very unique thing right here on the dress. Now, look what happens when you turn it over. It looks just like a whale. The whale nose, right here. You can see like a kind of fin, an eye, like a whale eye right where it should be. But the formation of a whale looks just like it. Right there, right where it should be. Once again, the eye, the fin, the whale. Absolutely amazing. Right where it should be. Whale rock, whaleback rock. So, we've been here, we've followed the path, we've gone past the actual rocks. We've the boulder with the plaque where Manhattan was purchased for trinkets, which actually has Peter Minuit's name on it and the word trinket, which are both in the story. You come here, you come to rock formations, which is the caves, which we see the rocks and some of the rocks right where they should be comparatively. And we also see whaleback rock right here. And then we have these two things right here. Once again, then we also have a V, which we saw on the dress and clothing of the woman in the imagery. So, just like I said, got this here. You have, oh, sorry, too far ahead. The V get into that in a little bit. The V. You have the rocks, rock formations here. Rock formations. And then you have whaleback rock right where it should be on this side. So you have all right on our path, everything that's on our path. Now, technically, the whaleback rock is a little bit closer on the dress, right? Where we're ending up is right in here, right where we should end up, or I guess technically right in here. So, because we do take the V, that's where we end up. We end up in kind of this general area. This is an image of whaleback rock that I took when I was out there. It's fun. You can jump up on there, and it's a pretty unique rock, that's for sure. Now, we have this arch as a part of the image, which is pretty unique, right? And people are like, well, there's tons of arches in Manhattan. True. Yeah, very true. But this is a marble arch, okay? And as you can see, there's kind of marble-ish here. We'll get into that a little bit later, okay? But there's some very unique things on this part of the image that goes with this, goes with the arch. It nicely fits into this. And I'll show you them here. Well, this is what it looks like today. Okay, here's the arch. All right, it's just outside of Inwood Hills area, the park area. It's been like this. This is, I think, from the 90s. I found stuff that goes back to early 90s, early 80s, and pretty much the colors are all the same between these buildings here. They've been there for a while, from what I can tell. Now, very uniquely, you have these colors, right? The yellow and the purplish maroon, whatever you want to call it. And but what's really amazing is this right here, this part. Look at this, right where it should be. Now, I think he uses for multiple things, because you've got the Moscow, excuse me, the Russian Orthodox-looking church stuff right here. But from this perspective, I'm quite certain its connection to this little garage has been there for a while. And once again, marble, so marble arch. Have that very unique little garage thingy with this right here. And but there's some dual meaning to this, since it's right next to this. And in fact, this wasn't even in the first painting or the original painting. This was just like gray, if I remember correctly. There was no Russian Orthodox Church. I think that was to help connect that it was connected to Russia, the Russia immigration piece. But let's keep moving. So we've seen these. This is where we've been. This is really interesting. This was the kind of the original parking area, or one of them. Obviously, you can park on the street and stuff like that, but this was an area to park. Now it's like a baseball diamond and field and stuff. And it's also it's got a nature center, but I'll show you that in a little bit. So this is the essentially the Bronx, or this most southern part of the Bronx, and this is kind of a it's a railroad that comes into, and there's a station like right around this area, but there's also a big rock that goes right in between. So the water here between this formation, this kind of islandish thing, and the rock, and then right in between that and the rail line. But as you can see, this goes back. This was from 1970s, and this is where the tablet, or what is the boulder with the plaque on it, the tablet that marks the location where Peter Minuit purchased the Manhattan. This is the Indian Caves with the rock formations. And then we come up here, then you see the V was even here in 1970. This is glacier potholes. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And right over here is the area for the whaleback rock. But this is the area we're going to be playing in. This is kind of the most important piece. This whole general area where we get into dragons and all this stuff, which is just amazing. So this sea here, this is the rock I was talking to you about, and look at the formation of this rock, how it kind of goes up and down, because we'll talk about that later. You know, the face of the woman. But this rock, sea rock, is what it's called. Now, there's some fun videos about this sea rock on YouTube. I'll show you one. But the sea rock was put there by the Columbia row team because Columbia University has their row house right here. I'll show it to you. They also have a number of their stadiums that are right here, right next to Inwood Hills. This is very important. I'll get into the reason why, but don't forget the colors, the blue, light blue, and the white. But once again, this was created like, I think it was something 1930s, maybe it was 1950s, where the Columbia row team put this sea. This is about 100 feet up here. This is no joke. I mean, it's hard to get the concept of how big this is, but that's 100 feet, and I've jumped from 50, maybe 60 feet at most. And this is kind of a rite of passage for the kids that grow up in this area to climb up this thing and to jump off into the water. And there's different levels, and probably where I've jumped off, I didn't jump off from this, but I've jumped off in other places like Lake Havasu and stuff in Arizona. Probably that's about this height comparatively to up there. And that's high, and trust me, you look down, it's pretty high. So this is a very large sea. If you ever have the chance, check out this. It's called Sea Rock. You can find it on YouTube. Fantastic. It gives you some amazing insight into the importance of this rock to the locals. Not just that, but like I said, it's a bit of a rite of passage, and you see many generations of people talking about it and how important this was. Not just this particular area, but this rock itself. Now, why do I focus on this? For two reasons. So, if you look at this flower, right? As I mentioned, the clock is pointing to 11, so that makes us the November image. And most searchers agree that the clocks that are on there give you kind of what helps you in a sense to figure out the flower that it should be, as well as the type of jewel, because the jewels and the flowers are connected to the months. So the month jewel, the month flower. So a November flower is a chrysanthemum. And the very unique thing about this one is the colors, right? The colors are light blue, baby blue, and white. So we'll talk about that in a little bit here. See, same colors, baby blue and white. Pretty amazing. Kind of makes a C, but we'll go into a much better C that's right there on the face of the woman. But this has a bigger importance because of the imagery and what it actually looks like. So, Columbia Lion logo. Well, this was what it would have been in 1971. Excuse me, to 1996. You know, this was the story. The secret was 1981. I think published in 82, maybe published in late 81. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was 82. So I think he was creating this in like 81, 82. But take a look at this. So it looks like a lion's mane. It looks like a lion. Has the same colors as the sea rock, the white, the light blue. But it gets even better. I just threw this in because I found it. I don't think that JJP maybe knows about this. Maybe he's an artist, right? But pretty cool. Chrysanthemum, lion's whiskers. So others have seen it and used it for a lion. And I thought that was pretty neat. And this was, in a time that, a well-known artist like JGP maybe studied, maybe knew, maybe saw it. I think it kind of looks similar in a sense. But check this out. This is the logo right before this one, 1957 to 1970. Kind of has the colors, right, a little bit better versus just this dark blue. Now, in the water, in the image, most people would say they see this kind of like lion-looking thing, it does look very similar to what you would call kind of like a Celtic lion or a Celtic dragon in a sense. It's a dragon because it has a serpent tongue and it has kind of like these unique dragon-like feet. But it, you know, it very much looks similar to what you would see in many uh, European style lions that you'd see in different flags and different coat of arms, but kind of hidden a little bit within the water, just above the waves in the image. So you have both logos. The one that was during the time when he was creating it, and the one right before it, which is pretty awesome. He has the hands kind of kicking up, the feet kicking up, just like this is doing. Pretty neat. Looking the right direction and all that good stuff. Now, as I mentioned, there's an important piece on the face. Not only does this look like the kind of the shape of that sea rock, but you have a C literally as the mouth. The C right there. I mean, if you can't see that, I don't know what to tell you. That looks exactly like a C right there. Okay. Now, you also have this thing here, which a lot of people say looks like a bridge. Check this out. I can't really see it right here, so let me move forward. This looks better. So you have the C, then you have a bridge. So the C rock, C rock, the formation is very similar, just flip it upside down, and you have what looks like a bridge for the brow and the nose here. You have the Henry Hudson Bridge right there. Okay, and if you look kind of close too, let's see if I can. This part of the face, you have a. Let's see if I can go back and find it. Yeah, it's kind of pointing. It's like a shadow pointing in this direction to where we should be. So once again, the C, the bridge, and a shadow pointing. Shadow pointing right to what? Here, right to where our start is, right to where people used to park, and right next to the Columbia Boathouse. Now, let's keep going. As I mentioned, and I wanted to make it clear, a couple things. The Columbia Boathouse is right here. Sorry. Columbia University soccer stadium, football stadium, tennis center. It's all right here. I mean, you have so much Columbia University stuff over here, which is going to play very important into why he picked who he picked for the main imagery. Uh, but let's dive into that a little bit. So this is the Bronx. Okay, here's Henry Hudson Bridge. Here's the Sea Rock. Kind of a nice narrow path you got to climb up. And this is where we're going to be going. This is where the rock is over here. Oh, sorry, I think it's like up here. Okay, but just keep in mind where we are. Oh, one more thing. Half Moon Overlook. Half Moon was Henry Hudson's boat he took when he came up here, when he essentially met with native populations. I think it was like 20 plus years before Peter Minuit, but they were both brought over here by the Dutch. And the Half Moon Overlook, as well as Henry Hudson Park and the bridge, and then you have the Henry Hudson River right through here. So this is very important because Henry and Henry Hudson's going to be very important to the verses. So why did he use an image that looks just like Lady Columbia? Well, once again, Columbia, 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 Columbia University, right? So Lady Columbia in what? All white dress, flowy white dress, right? Arms, just doing exactly pretty much the same. White flowy dress. Lady Columbia. Just some unique things to help you find where you're supposed to be going, right? Looks exactly like Lady Columbia, which you'll also see. Some people will say, "Well, this looks a lot like the Statue of Liberty." Well, yeah. Then what do you think Lady Columbia has represented in even major film studios, right? So Columbia Pictures has been using Columbia, Lady Columbia, for years, right? So the logo that Columbia uses, starting in 1936. This is Lady Columbia, and there's a lot of images of Lady Columbia. You can go out there and find it. But yeah, it has been Lady Columbia. Maybe many people will say that that is a good representation of the Statue of Liberty, and this is one of the reasons why. Once again, white flowy dress. So essentially, he's showing you Lady Columbia. Why? Because you got Columbia University right next to this place, where we're looking. All right, let's get into the verses. In the shadow of the great giant. Now, this is interesting because gray giants. How many giant gray buildings are all throughout Manhattan? Just countless, right? So it's kind of a joke to think that it's a gray giant building. Can't be. I mean, that's no help at all anywhere whatsoever in New York. They're all giant gray buildings everywhere. Then I thought maybe it was going to be the bridge, but no, it's not the bridge either. This actually used to be greenish, it's been different colors. Never wasn't always gray. But when you think about it, when you read in different literature, when it's talking about a gray giant, most of the time you're thinking, or what pops into your head, at least mine, is a tree, a giant gray bark tree, right? Now, I'm going to blow your mind here in just a little bit, but once again, this is the last natural forest in Manhattan. You have some massive trees in here, including ginkgos and tulips, that are all gray, that essentially cover. I mean, you're walking through this area and it's covered in trees. Like you're in the shadow the whole time. You barely see the sun when you're walking through this place. So, in the shadow of the gray giant. Now, in the shadow has some very amazing play on words. Okay, not only is it because you are in the shadow of these massive forest trees, but let's move forward here because we're going to get into something that's quite amazing in terms of a giant, a gray giant. So, now in the book, in the story, it talks a lot when you get into the Russian immigration piece and the fairy folk. It goes, these are all the fairy folk. We'll talk about that later, but forest tops, forest fathers, riverbeds, moss maidens. Now, where are we in New York? We're at the last natural forest in all of Manhattan. Huh, interesting, right? Now, keep in mind that we're also, this shows a connection to Russian Orthodox Church buildings. We'll show you that in just a little bit. But there's also a dragon. All right, this is our first dragon I'm going to talk about. Actually, kind of the second dragon. We're talking a little bit about the water dragon. The Celtic dragon that's like a lion, but there's another dragon in the water. There's a lot more dragons to come. But then what are these people doing? They're rowing, right? Interesting too, because this is the part right in the book that is talking about the Russian fairy folk, and you have some rowers right here. But let's just continue. So, real interesting thing is, once again, we've kind of seen this piece. There's also a bird sanctuary, or Inwood Hills is a bird sanctuary, I should say, and it has a natural salt marsh, which brings birds that are usually only by the sea, including seagulls, up into this part of New York. But you also have eagles and hawks and all sorts of very unique birds that come and migrate to this particular park that you don't see in other parts of Manhattan because you have a natural marsh, you have a bird sanctuary, you have different types of water coming in. You even have hummingbirds because there's jewelweed that's there in the marsh area. So let's continue moving forward. But this has a lot of importance. This bird here, next to marble, which we'll talk about soon. Now, this is a very famous tree at Inwoods. It's a ginkgo. It's one of the larger trees there. It's pretty amazing looking, and it kind of looks like that tree that Native American um, was sitting under, talking to that fairy. That's at the beginning of the book. And ginkgos are gray, 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 gray. Right? The bark is gray. Now, I was going down this direction until I came to learn a little bit more about another tree, but just want to show you a little bit more about the ginkgo. So, once again, Inwood National Forest, sun barely breaks. So the shadow of the gray giant or gray giants, right? Shadow of the ginkgos, the tulip trees, but it's pretty amazing because the sun barely breaks through. It even says that. So, natural forest barely breaks through. You're in the shadow almost the whole time because of these massive trees that just canopy above the park. So once again, naturalized forest. Now these large tulip trees, on average they grow about to 90 feet above the forest. Now that's high, but that's not even remotely the largest. And it gets fun here because the play on words in the shadow of the gray giant. But once again, this is where Hudson and the Harlem Rivers and the Spoiton Duville, if I'm saying that right, in spite of the devil. There's some great history to that, by the way, and what that means. And somebody, a soldier being sucked under the water, like around right in here, trying to, during a battle. But anyway, there's some quite amazing things. Mallards, canvasbacks, buffleheads, redheads, black ducks. This is, once again, blue heron. There's eagles. It's quite an amazing park because you have all this history to it, but you also have just the beauty of the woods, this natural marsh, the bird sanctuary, and a refuge. But the tulip tree is a highly important one. We're going to get into that. So once again, it usually grows between 60 to 90 feet. Has gray bark, so gray brown trunk. Tulip trees, gray. So in the shadow of the gray giant, these tulip trees are all through the park. But there's one in particular that everybody knew about and was highly important. And it's this tree right here. So this was the biggest tree in Manhattan. And this is from 1912, article I was talking about, Commissioner Stover. The oldest and the biggest tree in Manhattan, the giant tulip of Inwood. So a giant gray tree, right? Which also is now where that boulder stands. This is the spot where they purchased Manhattan, where Peter Minuit for trinkets purchased Manhattan under the giant gray tulip tree that was the biggest in Manhattan. Now, think about it. What a play on words. In the shadow of. Not only did they sit in the shadow of what this massive tree provided for them when they were signing or selling Manhattan, but today all you have is a little boulder there. Most people pass by it, don't recognize it, don't see it, don't care. But back in the day, this was a well-known tree, and I'll show you the proof of that in just a little bit here. And just think about it. Let me move forward here for a second so you can see how important it was. So a mighty tulip grew in the forest, and in a new city lacking a sense of anything from antiquity, New Yorkers latched into a tree. Here's a image of it. Look how tall it is up there. That's amazing. It's from like 1913. And then here's what it looks like now, right? This is what it is now. Okay. There's a whole story about the history of it and what it was, what it started as. But if If you want, you can read through that. I'll just pause there for a second so you can get a quick look, and I'll old tulip tree link to the metropolis of today, the Indians. Anyway, you can find this out there. It's on some of the old Inwood stuff. But the piece that really I love the most is the fact of how important it was. The giant tulip of Inwood became a popular destination for picnickers, school children, hikers looking to escape otherworld downtown. This is also what Henry Hudson and his crew would have seen, as well as the marker and where it's believed Peter Minuit purchased Manhattan. Now, think about it. In the shadow of, well, if you're in the shadow of, let's say, a sibling who is a famous artist, singer, sports, whatever, athlete, who knows, scientist, whatever it could be, right? When you're in the shadow, that means you're kind of less recognized, right? You aren't as seen or known, but you're still there. You're a part of it, and it's quite amazing because in the shadow of the Great Giant, or in the shadow of the largest tulip tree that was in Manhattan, now sits something that most people don't even pay attention to, don't care about. So, in the shadow has quite the amazing meeting that connects the old tree, old Gray Giant, with what it is now, which is a boulder that marks one of the most historical pieces of the history of New York and the native populations and how they were affected by immigration. So, if you need a Gray Giant that's a building, well, here's a Gray Giant building. And this is right here. This is where that little island thing is. This is right by where the row house is. You can see the sea. Here's Henry Hudson, the bridge. So if you need a giant, Gray Giant that's a building, you got one right here. And in fact, it's been around since 1969. It's a building 2400 Johnson Avenue. And as far back as I can go, it looks like it's been gray. So, but you know what? I don't think it has to do with the building. I think it has to do with the largest gray giant tulip that was a historical marker back then, as much as it is today, just less well known in the shadow of the Gray Giant. So find the arm that extends over the slender path. Don't hate me for my horrific artistry. I'd say I'm in the shadow of Spy. I think his real name's Steve, out there on Discord, who's just an absolutely amazing artist. Hopefully, he doesn't mind me using his name and information. Most people know him. He's probably one of the most most knowledgeable searchers that I've come across. And he and I don't see eye to eye on a lot because I'm the alt guy. But at the same time, I highly respect his artistic ability. So apologies to him for not coming to him and asking him if he could, create this for me. But I don't want to waste his time. He already made me this absolutely amazing image of the angels from the dam out there in Hoover Dam. And so anyway, but I like this, even though it's horrific artistry. But you see the shape, the formation of this little island here. Then you also have this very thin kind of path that you have to take to get up to the sea rock, and then right behind that is the rail line, and there's a station that's like right here, maybe a little bit farther right here that you can take it off. But essentially, you would either park here. Back in the day, now as you can see, this is not where you park. There's some parking spots in this, but it's a baseball diamond and stuff. And I think this is a natural nature center. But this, once again, as we went through, looks very similar. Has the right colors for Columbia University. Has a similar logo to their particular logo at the time. And this is where the sea would be found. So this is the sea rock. And then you have the stem right here. That kind of makes a nice stem where the path would be. And once again, I think this is where we start. You either start coming here, you take a rail line into this place, or you would have parked up here or in the streets over here. All right. So once again, Columbia University Boathouse. This is where we are. This is where you would have parked, or on the streets over here, or you would have come in and caught this particular rail line and then taken the bridge over and walked across. But this is where I think we start, where he wanted us to start, and then we're going to take this path, which is truly, or maybe it's this path. I think that's actually the right path there. Yeah. So you come in this way, this path, till we get to the rock or the boulder with the plaque. But it's important to talk about Columbia Boat University here. Columbia University for this particular next verse. So in the summer, you'll often hear a whirring sound. So at first, I thought it had something to do with like a bug or a bird that was coming there, and it makes a lot of sense, especially because you come to find out that the hummingbirds come into this area because there's jewelweed in the marsh area, and so summertime they specifically come there, and once again Moscato Marsh, and this is where we're starting. So I was like, oh, it's got to be the hummingbird, right? Because it's right there in the marsh, and you usually see hummingbirds in summer come to it because of the jewelweed marsh, the Muscat Marsh in Manhattan. I was like, oh, I nailed it, got this. Yep, this is it. Until I read the Japanese hint. I was like, oh no, wait a second. It's not the hummingbirds, but maybe he used it as both. But I will say this Japanese clue, I think, makes it that much more, that gives me that much more confidence that I'm on the right track for the location, because there's only one thing that actually makes sense for this. But let's read through this. What kind of things make this sound? You would think maybe a bug. All right, we went through that. The sound of a propeller. Yep. If you include the word cars from line 7, then it seems like it's the whirring sound is referring to something that runs across the land, like above land. It's not flying. So we have to find something that is above land that's not flying and is powered by humans to run. All right. Some people are like, well, I guess it's a bike. There's bikes at every single park you can go to, and it's not above land, by the way. It's actually rolling on land. So we have to find something that's above land, that moves above land, right? It moves above land. It is not flying, and it's powered by humans, and is in this general area. And that obviously is powered by humans. It's not a bug or a bird. It's got to be something that humans are doing. So what could a human be doing in this area that is above land, but it's not flying, and is powered by humans that makes a whirring noise? I was scratching my head for years on this one until it just came to me. And I was like, wait a second, and why in the summer only? Well, let's get into this. So Columbia Boathouse, is right here. And if you can see the boathouse, it has windows and stuff. Yeah. Okay. Go next. Well, have you ever heard of an erg? These have been around for decades, for quite a long time. I can't remember the first one, 60s, something like that. And they were pretty, they had this pulley and flywheel early on, and making quite the whirring noise. But don't just listen to me. Varsity.com UK is talking about how ergs make what? That funny whirring sound ergs make in the gym, while we know full well how physically grueling they can be proved to be. Well, all right. New York Times talking about none other than the flywheel and an erg, row ergs, nickel-plated. That smooth whirring noise was almost like a rhythmic endorsement and reminder of own power and output. So you got the whir. It absolutely is a whir. Now, above land? Well, look at this. If you know anything about an erg, what do? They go back and forth, just the seat. So they push out, and they come back in. They push out, and they come back in. Essentially, as they come in, they are now this part in the cable, which is the flywheel, comes back in, and then they push with their legs out, and this seat moves above land, but it's not flying. It's not a huge movement, But yeah, it's moving above land. It's powered by humans, and it is not flying. It matches every criteria for the Japanese hint. And it's right next there. It's right there. But why summertime? Well, think about this. Okay? In the summertime, it would be hot, especially in the 1980s when he, created this. And not every building had air conditioning. I don't even know when air conditioning really got popular, and especially in like a gym. But what would you do in the summertime in the gym? You would open up the windows. You'd probably open up the doors. You would make sure that you can get some air coming in there, and you wouldn't be out as much on the actual water because it's kind of hot. But you'd be inside. Now, during the spring, the fall, and late winter, you would be outdoor or on the water. You would be actually in school session as a part of the row team out there on the water. And if it was too cold, you would do what? You would close the doors and windows to the boathouse, and so you couldn't hear it. You would not be able to hear the whirring, at least as well, of the ergs that they were using at the boathouse. So the summertime, it'd be the only time you would really hear it. Now, once again, what do we have here? In the Russian part of the book, you have 3 rowers, and you have somebody who's kind of like their coach standing above, kind of like row in a sense, right? And a truly amazing thing is, you can find Native Americans, they would actually row and race standing up. Many of them. I'm sure there was races where they didn't, but I think if I remember correctly, this was right there somewhere up in Ontario, Canada. So fairly close. I could be wrong on that. I had multiple images. I can't remember which one I used, but so you have rowers right there, right where the Russian piece of the story is, and where you have the Russian Orthodox Church connection. Now, once again, we're going to get into this piece, the Russian Orthodox Church connection, and the dragon. Because this dragon, another dragon, all right, we're going to get into many dragons. It's going to be fantastic. You're going to love it. It's so much fun. And the influence, I think, of certain books and why he chose Inwood Hills and added dragons and all this different stuff. But let's keep moving. So you may have been like, well, that's not a Russian Orthodox Church in the background. Well, yes, actually it is. This is the Russian Orthodox Church in Moscow. Okay, it looks just similar to this. It just doesn't have the spire. Okay, but look, see, the Russian Orthodox Church in Moscow, Russia, the Cathedral of Christ. Now, this is illustration of the Russian Orthodox Church, which is about I think it's about 6 miles away, maybe. So it's somewhere between 5 to 7 miles away from Inwood Hills Park, just south of it. And what is it? Well, it's the St. Nicholas Russian Orthodox Cathedral. And essentially, it is the administrative center of the Russian Orthodox Church in North America, Upper East Side of Manhattan, New York City. So check out these above here, because it's going to get fun. So see these? This is what I showed you that made the connection. That was the illustration of this. But check this out. Okay, once again, Russian Orthodox Church. Dragon, Russian part of the story. Rowers. Here's a better imagery of that Russian Orthodox Church. That's about between 5 to 7 miles away, just south of Inwood Hills. And the importance of this, check these out. See how these are called kind of tall spires or tall towerish things, kind of tall towers with these, I'm not even sure what you call them on the top. Looks just like it, right? You have one tall, big one, and you have these kind of towering with these formations up on top. These formations up on top. All right, keep moving. So some people would say, well, you need to really look down in different parts of Brooklyn to where the majority of Russian migration came into New York. True, that's probably the majority, at least initially. However, uptown Manhattan and the Bronx had significant Russian immigration coming into uptown Manhattan, the Bronx, the specifically, I think it was Brighton Beach area. So, excuse me, no, not Brighton Beach area. That's in the Brooklyn. That's where most people think or focus on in Brooklyn area. But Upper East Side had Russian-speaking Jewish communities. You have the Bronx, Russian immigrants settled, attracted, good schools, rent. The third wave of Russian immigrants, Soviet Jews in 1970, largely settled in Brighton Beach, which is down in Brooklyn, including uptown Manhattan and the Bronx, the fourth wave. So you have quite a bit of immigration that happened from Slavic nations into upper part of Manhattan and the Bronx. So let's get deeper into the verse. Now this whole cars abound, although the sign nearby speaks of Indy's native, the natives still speak of him of hard word in 3 volumes. All of this is talking about one person. Okay, well, we'll get into how. But all this is connected to Henry Hudson. Cars abound, sign nearby speaks of the Indy's native, the natives still speak of him of hard word in 3 volumes. So stay with me here. So, Henry Hudson Bridge, right? Now, there's multiple signs nearby. Oh, excuse me. We're going to start with cars abound. So cars abound. I used to think that this parking was the cars abound, but then I really thought about it, and it doesn't make a lot of sense because cars abound means just a very large amount of cars, essentially, right? It's not just a few cars; it's a ton of cars. Abound means essentially you're going to have a lot of that thing there. So parking didn't make sense. I wanted it to be because I was struggling, and I wanted to kind of connect to this. But we're coming this direction, so we're seeing the bridge as we're kind of taking this direction. And why does that make sense? Well, we're talking about Henry Hudson in all of these different verses. And why? Well, Henry Hudson Bridge, obviously very important, built in 1936, or around that time period. Opened, yep, New York Times, 1936. All right. Once again, Brooklyn resident, chauffeur, safety extinguisher, drives the 7 millionth car to pass over the Henry Hudson Bridge. 7 million cars in that amount of time, from 1936 to 1938. 1936 to 1938. 7 million cars had passed in that little bit amount of time. Now, during the first days, like 9,000 vehicles crossed. However, now 120,000 vehicles a day on any given day cross over the Henry Hudson Bridge. Now, if that's not cars abound, I don't know what is, because that's a massive amount of cars. So anyway, let's move on. Although the sign nearby speaks of Indy native. Well, there's 2 signs that kind of speak of Indy's native. Now, stay with me here. Don't let me lose you, because I know some of you are going to freak out. Oh, Indian is not an Indy. Or talking about Indies and natives. And you are correct. But it's right there in the book, as well as the historical aspect of his voyage that is marked. And we'll show you what I mean. So, Indy's native. There's Indian Road. That's right here. So, and it has the sign of Indian Road. Now, technically, anybody who lived on Indian Road is kind of a native to Indian Road, right? And I guess you can kind of call them Indian Road natives in a sense. Now, don't let me lose you. I know. I don't really think that's what it is. I think it's actually more connected to this, right? This particular plaque where you have a sign essentially talking about the native Indian populations that were at this particular this particular location for many years before it was purchased, and this is where it was purchased. But getting into the Indies piece, because obviously most people are thinking, well, India or East Indies, right? Well, we're going to get into that in just a second. So we know that this is on the neck of the woman, looks just like this piece. So to me, that's why he's pointing to Indies native or Indian being on this particular sign. Now, let me go forward. He even talks about this particular piece of not calling somebody an Indian or somebody from the Indies in the book called the story part, The Vanishing. So the fair people had expected to find newly discovered world inhabited by mortals. They were surprised and somewhat disappointed, therefore, to find that the native tribes people, whom they were never so foolish to call Indians, were already in the residence of the northernmost coast. Now, it's also the northernmost part of Manhattan, so that's kind of interesting, northernmost, right? Um, However, I don't think that's what this piece is talking about, the northernmost. So I just threw that in there. Uh, why Indies, right? Well, because the term Indians to refer to Native Americans arose primarily from the initial confusion of European explorers, blah, 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 who had reached the East Indies when they actually arrived in America, right? So what they thought were going to be Indians from India were actually Native Americans, but they ended up calling them Indians, okay? And essentially it was a misnomer, that in a kind of European languages discourse, the misnomer persisted, and the word Indian stayed with them, for most of the European language, and to the point where, all right, speak of Indies native. Don't forget, we're going to get into this. We're going to tie Henry Hudson into this whole thing. Now, a plaque that speaks of Indies natives is just north at the farther point of where Henry Hudson came into uh, above what is today the Hudson River. Uh, but this particular plaque is not directly at Inwood Hills. I don't know what's across in the Bronx where you have Henry Hudson Park and the Half Moon Park that are right across in the Bronx, because I didn't get a chance to go there, and there's not a whole lot that you can find online. But I know these plaques are all up and down different parts of New York and Manhattan, and similar plaques to this to kind of mark the places where it's known that he stopped. So we know that he actually did come into that particular area and met with native tribes in the Inwood Park area, and that's why you have not only the bridge, but you also have the park, and it has a reference to the actual ship that he came, which is the Half Moon, which is going to get very exciting here in just a minute. But as you can see, the word Indies was used. So Henry Hudson Explorer here ended the voyage of the Half Moon in the quest of the Indies. So that's where they thought where they were going. They thought they were coming to see India and to meet with Indians from the Indies. But they met Indians, or from the kind of stuck, which are essentially Native Americans. So the play on words goes into the fact that this whole piece of the verses are connected to Henry Hudson, and I'm going to prove it to you. So this particular, as I mentioned, is just north. It's up in Albany. That was the very tip and farthest that they went. Explorer here ended the voyage in the Half Moon in the quest of the Indies, September 1609. Now, this is what they would have seen back then. The Half Moon coming into that area, and about 20 years, a little bit less. No, actually, if I'm doing my math right, that would be about 17 years, right before Peter Minuit purchased Manhattan with a handful of trinkets. It's also said that Verrazano likely sailed past this part in 1524, but we know that Henry Hudson in the Half Moon did. Now, the Half Moon is very important here. Okay, but before we get to that, remember in 3 volumes. So once again, the natives still speak of him of hard word in 3 volumes. So we're going to have to find something, and hard is capitalized, so obviously it's a reference to some kind of a proper noun, right? And in 3 volumes. Now, in the Library of Congress, this is a little blurry, sorry. In the Library of Congress, you have Henry Hudson's third voyage in the 3rd volume of Purchas His Pilgrims. 1909 publication from the Library of Congress. This was essentially put together by the writings of, I think, his first mate or one of his crew members. And the important part of this is not just the fact that it's in 3 volumes, but the word hard word. Hard word. What's the importance of that? It's again, 3rd volume, Henry Hudson, Library of Congress. Of him of hard word. A normal person who would think this is a Japanese clue from the Japanese version a couple of years later after it was published in the US. A normal person would think that this was referring to some kind of a writer, but it's difficult to find out who that is. Mr. Preiss said in order to arrive to this person, you must play with words, and the start is chicken. Eventually, you will end up at the name of the person who is referred to by him. So, can we get to a very easy start with chicken and get to Henry? Oh, extremely easy. And then we'll get into the hard word. That's in the book that's in Library of Congress. That is 3rd volume. Well, chicken, egg, hen, Henry, right? Bird, chicken, the bird, possibly the original point in the cycle. Egg, laid by the chicken. Or it could have been chicken, hen, chicken, hen, Henry. I mean, it could go that short. You don't even have to throw an egg. But hen, a female chicken that hatches from the egg and grows up. Henry, a playful or a metaphorical name for either a rooster, male chicken, or a human who raises it or befriends the hen. Now, we can even have more fun. There's Henry Hawk, who is a well-known cartoon character, Chicken Hawk, since 1961. Those of us who are older will remember this person or this character. But we can go deeper and have even more fun with the play on words. But to do that, I want to throw in one other piece, right? So you have King Henry IV of France, who essentially quoted, "If God grant me life, I will see that every laboring man in my kingdom shall have his chicken to put in the pot." This is pretty neat because it's actually a well-known dish based off of King Henry, which is King Henry chicken, or pull a pot, I think it is. And a chicken in pot every Sunday is essentially from Henry, King Henry IV of France. So we go deeper. Chicken, egg, hen, Henry Hawk, chicken Henry, and then Henry. So we don't even have to go that deep though, because I just was playing around, having some fun. Anyway. All right. So another dragon, right? We're going to cover all these pieces. Dragon, this map, what's in the middle of the map, this compass, and this. Now, this is in the Japanese version as well. It's not in the original version. Once again, the Japanese version came out a couple years later. And I think the reason why it did was, and I think he gave some additional imagery, is because a couple of years had gone by and nobody had found it. So I think he was giving some extra clues. Now, check out this ship. This is one image connected in this entire thing. So this isn't like separated. This is one image, right, with the ship here. All these unique things. Well, we're going to connect all of them. And how can I do that unless the one location that we're talking about is actually accurate to it being the one location? So, but this down here, it's a ship. Well, check out the Half Moon. This is Henry Hudson's ship. This was a postcard on Will's cigarette, and this would have gone out all over the world because they were, obviously shipping those from around the world, and it looks pretty much spot on to be just like this. Looks almost exactly like it. Especially the front piece of it. How it kind of goes up this way and then down, but you have you know, quite an amazing connection to what looks almost spot on to be the half moon. So nice connection to Henry Hudson, the half moon, next to a dragon, next to a compass, and a map and a treasure. Now, the natives still speak of him of hard word in 3 volumes. We've already shown you that there's a book in the Library of Congress that talks about Henry Hudson that has, it's the 3rd volume. Now, hard word. Well, the crew got some natives drunk on wine and aqua vitae. Okay, hooch. There's that H word, hooch, from the Indian word hoochino for hard liquor. Hudson and his crew plied them with. One passed out, slept aboard the ship. The natives returned the next day and were relieved to find him unharmed. They thought he died because he passed out. And it talks about this in the 3rd volume. That's in the book that's in the Library of Congress. And the word was aqua vitae, hard liquor, and or the water of life. I'll show you that in just a minute. Hooch actually wasn't accepted or became a word known well throughout Native American tribes as the word for hard liquor until later on. But I actually think that came from an Alaskan tribe. However, the word hooch, by the time the story was written, was well known. And so I do think it's a connection to not just aqua vitae, but the fact that the hymn of hard word or hymn of hard liquor of hooch was Henry Hudson, because Henry Hudson was possibly the first European or individual who brought hard liquor to native populations, at least on the East Coast. Aqua vitae, water of the aqua vitae. It's essentially water of life. Now, there's also books that talk about the native tribe versions of this, and it's very interesting to read both of them and some of the passages between both of them, because they both tell the story, and just in a little bit of a different way. But it's pretty obvious that they've never touched this stuff to the point where they didn't know what they were getting themselves into. And one guy, passed out. One Native American passed out, drank too much, and luckily came back and was extremely excited about how it made him feel. So, I guess they didn't get chased out at that time, but they thought that they might have killed one of their tribe members. But so here's from the actual 3rd volume, that's in the Library of Congress. You see the word aqua vitae. It's talking about how had an experience essentially intoxicating liquors, completely unknown to them. So he essentially brought them the hard word, or brought them hard liquor. And here's some of the tribe members saying the half moon. Hudson entering the New York Bay. All right, let's keep going. 3 volumes. Take twice as many steps as the hour or more from the middle of one branch of the V. Take twice as many steps as the hour or more from the middle of one branch of the V. Well, the hour is 11. Okay, hour hands point to 11. So we're going to be taking 22 steps. Well, what's pretty amazing too is to connect the verse, I think, with the image. It's helpful because you also have bolded certain Roman numerals, an X, one of the eyes, and one of the eyes. It's easier to see when you're looking at the painting or image, but only 4 of these look bold. The others don't look bold. This doesn't look bold. These don't look bolded. But the X, the I, and the I look bold. And so X and 2 I's is 22 in Roman numerals. So pointing to 11, and then the bold numbers are 22. So There's actually two V's as we're kind of on our path here. Well, there's more than that, but this one's going completely wrong direction because east is this way, right? You have north, south, east, west. But on the main path, you have two. This one starts out going south, so it kind of knocks that one out because it's mostly south, and then it starts going east later on. We'll get into the word branch later on, and with dragons and all the clove and all this stuff, but and east east road. I'm telling you, it's going to get amazing here. But so this is going east, right? And 22 steps takes you just about to right to where we need to be, because this is essentially where, in my opinion, it ends. The whole park is used in the imagery. The whole park is used because this has an very important. The clove has a very important piece that we're going to talk about that connects the dragons that we're seeing. But this is Whale Rock, so we have the V right where it should be, where the imagery connected to this and this and this and all that, and then the Whale Rock, and the V's should be up here, which is just above them. But this is where we end up. We take 22 steps on this V, and this is what this V looks like. And the second V will be this one. So this is the first V. Okay, first V starts out going south first, and then the second V, which is this one, and we'd be going this way. So 22 steps takes us to where we need to go. And you see the V. Now, when we get there, we come to this location. Now, I don't know if this is still here. I read about in something I'm going to share in just a little bit in an article somebody wrote about the history of this and their knowledge of it and them remembering it as a child. Well, in 2023, it seemed that the park authorities were trying to get rid of this area and trying to plant more trees. So this could be completely gone by now. I don't know. Unfortunately, it would be kind of devastating, at least to us who care about the secret. And I think the story that Byron was trying to share here, the importance of immigration and migration and all that good stuff. But when you come to this opening from the V, after taking about 22 steps or more, depending on how large the steps you take, you come to two things. You come to this teepee thing, right, that shows the native population and how they used to live here. And also this on the ground here, we'll talk about in a little bit. But now, this I know has been built and rebuilt over the years. So I don't know if it's still at the same location it was, but I do have proof that shows that people remember it as early as the early 90s, and even some that remember it being, and witnesses that talk about how this was even around even earlier than that. So gets us close to the timeline that we need. So let's keep moving. So I'm just showing this because it has some importance. These look like marbles, right? And kind of like marble-ish rock or marble-ish, whatever you want to call this, is very marbled. And you also have this very unique bird. And why would you have that? Well, we'll talk about that. So glacial potholes and the clove. The glacial potholes, when you get to these, and we'll show them in a little bit, that's where you get to marble rock. And the clove, I'll show you in a little bit, is also called Bird Alley. Talk about the potholes first. So potholes, these are amazing. There's 3 of them, and they've been around for a long time. And they have water that gushes out of them, that goes into this underwater springs and stuff. But as you can see, the Inwood marble lies beneath mica schist. So more reason why there should be marble where we're going. We're right next to a bird. This is Bird Alley. And but let me show you something that's pretty amazing. So this is the 3 holes. It's again 3, discovered in 1931. 3 is important. This is where it's at. This is where we're ending up. This is the whole clove area. Now, how many of these do we have? 1, 2, 3. And they're different sizes. You have a real large one, you have kind of a medium size, and a smaller one. Well, you have the same with the glacial potholes. And they look very similar to the shape of these, right? And gushing out water. And these are just happen to be just, the water's down here, right? I'll show you here in just a minute. So you have 3 of these. Now you're like, oh, well, you wouldn't really see these. They're not that significant. Yeah, look how big these things are. They're massive. I mean, these things are huge, right? Very large. Now, this is my buddy sticking his head in one, and water gushes out down these things here. As you can see how large these things are. Very big. Not just tiny. You don't just pass by them. You're like, whoa, these things are huge. And it also makes quite the nice connection to the wave and water rushing out, right? And you have this kind of unique thing here, just like you do here. But see that water? Not only is natural springs, but like think about when it's like raining and stuff, and it just comes, water is kind of flowing out of it. See the water flowing out? Looks very similar to this whole thing. Let's get another image. Glacial potholes in the clove. So, and see simple roots. Okay, so we look down, we get to where we're going. We're going to see simple roots. Well, not only the native roots, native population roots of those who probably over thousands of years migrated to this location and used it as a home to live, for resources, and live very simple means, right? So simple roots and simple type of living situation, just live by nature, simple roots, but also you have what looks to be not just branches, but roots. And you have roots that kind of grow out that, die from these trees. So it looks like a combination of roots and branches that were used to create this teepee. So simple roots means multiple things. Look down, because this is downhill from where our path is, just slightly downhill. Okay, and but you have to look down as well to find these things. Downhill, and look down, and you see simple roots. Roots as well as branches to create a little simple dwelling for Native American. So, and it really also pretty interesting is at Inwood Hills, they're directly from their own website, or from the parks, Manhattan Parks website, they say prehistoric roots exist in dramatic caves, valleys, ridges, shifting glaciers. Once again, the last natural forest and marsh. So pretty amazing. But once again, you got this like branches and roots. Now, like I said, I'm certain this has been built and rebuilt over the years. So I have no idea if this was at the same location. Maybe these were here and some of the stuff remained and it gave them the right location and spot. I hope so, because one of my first theories is it's located right underneath this rock. Now, before you go out there, don't go, I'm just going to say it, just don't go out there and destroy this place. Don't just go digging. Go work with park authorities, go talk to them, do what they did in Boston and just give them the information. I'm going to try to get this to them. They'll probably never watch it, but maybe if you know somebody that's there as a part of the park authority and they're going to be, putting trees in or doing work on this area or changing it, maybe that's an opportunity. Just don't destroy this beautiful place. Please, just don't. It's just not worth it. You're going to get in trouble and you're going to ruin what people love and have been coming to for many centuries and centuries practically, and decades more recently, to see this type of stuff. So just don't do it. But I'm going to give you my theories, and hopefully maybe one day park authorities will find it, or give somebody the right to be able to do some research and see if they can find it. But I don't even know if this is in the same spot because I know it's been built and rebuilt over the years. So, but AKA Bird Alley. So why is that important? Because the Clove, this is where we're at, Bird Alley. Once again, the marble. So the marble's here. Bird Alley is right here. So that's the Clove. This is the Clove, Bird Alley. What do you have? You have a bird, marble, marble. Why is this important? Because of the shape of this bird. This part, which is a very unique eye, right? It looks like this weird M kind of thing, shadowy. I don't know. And you have this tail. This tail is very unique, which I love. I didn't realize this until I was flipping it around. I'm like, oh my gosh. Well, look at this. And compared it to this. Yep, looks just like the teepee. Made of what? Twigs, branches, and roots. Simple roots. Simple dwelling. Looks just like the tail of the bird. Now, look at this rock. Now, there's a chance this rock could have been here for a while too. Hopefully, because it looks very unique. It looks like the bird's body. Okay, just take a look at this, how it's kind of thick up here. Then you got this piece and it gets thinner. Then you have this unique kind of M thing here, like we were just talking about. Check this out. So the body of the bird, it's kind of upside down, has this same kind of shape here. Thick up top, and then it gets thin down here. And you have the same shape. And then you also have this really unique. It kind of looks like an M from the shadow. It's interesting, but this piece kind of sticks out. This part right here sticks out. And look at this. You have something that kind of looks like that up on top. I didn't catch it very well because I wasn't sure. I mean, it could be this too, but this really connects with me because it looks like it's more on top, but it could be this. But you ask me, it looks very similar to the bird, to this. So my first theory is that it's underneath that rock, wherever that rock was, if it was there in 1980, underneath that. But once again, I don't think it said this is the right location anymore. I think it's been moved. Now, what do we see in the middle? What is he looking at? Right in the middle here. Look at this topographical map. Okay, and look what's in the middle. Okay. Triangle. Triangle. Teepee. Right in the middle of the map. Remember the teepee from childhood when my parents I first moved to New York. So this is from an article, and I'll show you the website for it, and you can go check it out if you want. But this is some amazing things from it. So this is talking about the teepee in Inwood Hills, and this individual who wrote this came from Russia. Their family came from Russia, which is even a more amazing connection to this whole thing. So the teepee from my childhood, when my parents first moved from New York, from Moscow in the early 90s. So we have a connection, and we have eyewitness that in the early 90s, this teepee was at Inwood Hills Park. Okay, so let's move forward. This is the website. This is a fantastic article. I really appreciate this person putting this together because it's the only evidence I could find that actually shows that there was a teepee, at least as early as the early 90s. And then he also, I'll show you in just a second, there were some additional people he spoke to that were there even earlier than him and his parents, and remember it always being there, or always something being in that particular area. But it's really cool that it connects to the post-immigration Russia, and they're Russian, and they just happen to come up into that area, and he remembers the teepee, as a part of an elementary school class trip. So, a park ranger instructed us to sit in a circle of logs, which we see, it's still there. At least it was in 2023 when this was written, and they were writing this because there's a good chance it was being taken away. The park authorities wanted to put some trees there, keep people out of it. So don't go destroy it. It's just going to make them block it off, and no one will ever get there anyway. So please don't destroy this place. It means a lot to people's. It means a lot to their childhood, and it means a lot to those who live around this area. So just don't do anything to it, please. This is just for informational purposes only. Maybe one day, like I said, park authorities might go in and use this or find something when they're trying to plant stuff. So I'm just trying to give some information to help. So this is where it blew me away. His parents, for instance, told me that they also remember it from the 1990s. So not just him, but also Bert and Cheryl Fleming. I don't know who they are, but this person does. You can go read it, the article. And talking about they lived in Inwood since before his parents did, and they say that there has always been some sort of structure in that barren area where the teepee stood. So there's to some park goers that have been there for even longer, they remember that there was some structure or some teepee that was there since they can remember, which is fantastic. That's great, because if you read through this article, it also talks about somebody who has been managing it for like the last decade or more, maybe a little bit more, and they've had to rebuild it over time. And in their memory, they're the ones who originally built it. But according to many and those that remember, in their childhood, they remember the teepee being there, and even taking childhood elementary school, I guess, an opportunity with their classmates to go out there and listen to a park ranger and learn about the park and the Native Americans and actually see the teepee and remember the teepee. So we have something that looks like a teepee. We have something that connects here to the Half Moon by Henry Hudson. We're going to talk about this in a little bit, but now we're also going to be talking about dragons. Let's move forward. So most people also see that there is a kind of like a water serpent or dragon or something that's in this wave. Here's the one that matches the 1970s-ish logo for Columbia University. That's the lion, but here's something else that could be an alligator. To me, it's another connection to a water serpent or a dragon. You can see the eye, you can see the mouth, and you see a tail. And basically, it's in there within the crashing wave. But just more pieces to dragon. So we're going to talk about dragon. Dragon, right there, Russian Orthodox Church. Now, most people don't give any thought whatsoever to the back of the book, and I don't either. This is the only one I do, because this is the only thing I've ever heard somebody that worked on the actual The Secret admit to Byron Preiss giving direction on how they wanted this particular image to what to include and how to be shot. So who did that? Now we have a dragon here, or some kind of a unique figure that looks like a serpent or a dragon to me, with the Brooks Brothers, right? And this is past the story, past the images. Once again, it's considered the back of the book, and most searchers don't think Byron had any influence on anything in the back of the book, especially the images. Well, before I show you how you can learn that that's not truly the case, what's the importance of Brooks Brothers? Well, Brooks Brothers had a home in Inwood Hills. And actually, what I'm going to move to next is the first time I found out that there's some people still working on Inwood Hills as their search. And they actually put together this piece about Brooks Brothers, and the person who did the video, I'm going to show you in just a minute. I'm not going to show you the actual video, just a little image of it. He brought up the fact that Brooks Brothers not only lived in that area, but also, at Inwood, had a house at Inwood, but also an interesting first lord of the soil. This is interesting, occupancy by the first lord of the soil, which is very interesting for different pieces because of the word soil in the actual verse, but I think that's connected to something a little different. But when you go to this particular video, by the way, I think she's fantastic. I think she's one of the best searchers out there, and bringing just real kind of direction. And I don't agree with everything, but at the same time, the way that she approaches it, I think, is fantastic, and brings in has some great connections that I don't have, and has been kicked out of some communities like I have, not for being mean or anything, just for basically trying to bring different views and a different direction. And it's amazing, you do that to people who think they're experts, and you get kicked out of communities. You're just like, wow, okay, can't even listen to a different viewpoint, whatever. But so I really like her work. So go check out her work. But in this particular video, Ben Assen, photographer of the Secret of Treasure Hunt book, part one, Ben Assen, who was one of the photographers for the book, at the 19-minute mark of this particular video, talks about how Byron influenced and gave him direction for that particular Brooks Brothers image. Not only what to shoot, but also how to shoot it. And this is the only time I've ever heard anybody admit to Byron having an effect and influence on any image in the back of the book. And it just happened to be this particular one that has a dragon in it, and the Brooks Brothers. And I was like blown away. I'm just like, I can't believe this. This is absolutely amazing. So thank you to for creating this, to the Secret Deciphered, and to Ben Assen for giving us that little hint. You kind of see it when he's talking about it. He's almost kind of jump away from the discussion. He's almost like he gave something he shouldn't have away. But I thought it was pretty funny. But at the same time, it's the only evidence I think I've ever seen that there is some influence on, I think, maybe an occasion that Byron has in the back of the book. It's that particular image. So 19-minute mark. Go check out this video. Watch the whole thing. It's great work. We know the influence of dragons. Byron has been, he created the dragon world. He published this, and this was something that we know was influential in not just his life, but in the Secret. There's a lot of mention of dragons in the Secret in many different ways. I'll show that in just a minute. But I also think that Byron was influenced by a couple of different things. The Marvel Comics Spider-Man. This particular one is Night of the Dragon. Where did it take place? Inwood Hills Park. Okay, now Byron became a publisher of different Spider-Man publishing, I think books and different things. And now this was too early. This was in 1970s when this came out. I think this was, when was it, 1972. So he didn't start publishing stuff for Spider-Man until like the 1990s. But this particular one, I think, could have had an impact on him. So Night of the Dragon at Inwood Hills Park. We know that he was a very significant figure in the publishing world of Spider-Man. So did this have influence on him when he was younger? Possibly. Now, check this out. Now, this one is the one I think had the most influence, this particular book, because it's the Dragon Murder Case. Now, it was a book. It was also made a movie. Now, this book came out in 1933, and what does it do? It talks about Inwood Hills Park. It takes place at Inwood Hills Park. And where? At the glacial potholes, and mostly at the Clove, where the body of what was supposed to be the dragon, the murdered body that was found at the glacial potholes in the Clove area, where a dragon was supposed to have killed it and killed the individual. I'm not going to give away the story. I'll let you go read it. I know the ending, and it's pretty fun. But it talks about the caves, goes deep into Inwood Hills, and it does quite a good connection to many pieces of the search, including many words that are used in the actual verse. So let's dive into it. It's fun. Okay, so this was, I think, the movie that was made about it, the Dragon Murder Case. Once again, Inwood Hills Park. So the Clove. This is from the actual story. We get into it. I think so. We have the word clove in there, which is great because that's where we end up. that's the final place, and East Road that we have to take to get there, or the East, the narrow, take the 22 steps going east, because that takes us to the Clove. Okay, once again, Clove, the potholes, the Clove, the East Road, the Bird Refuge, right? East Road, the Clove. This kind of got out of order a little bit, my bad. But this was something that Eric, or Bad Eric, I think he changed his name in the Discord. Somebody I really like to see. I love the way he thinks. He definitely looks at things differently, and he's given me some amazing things to think about. So he shared this, and he gave me the thumbs up that I could share this in my video. So thank you. But you can see all throughout The Secret how many times Byron's talking about the dragon or dragons. So we know it's important to him. So why wouldn't he pick a location that not only had a Spider-Man theme, but also had a whole book and movie about a location that had a dragon, that has native populations, that has immigration and migration, and all these connections, imagery to it. And look here. This is where it takes place. This is the dragon pool, right by the potholes. The potholes around here. You can see this is the Clove. Okay, this whole area is where it mostly takes place in the dragon murder case. Now, the map itself isn't an exact map in terms of like the roads and everything to the real map, but it's a very good likeness to it. I'll give you that. It really is. Once again, it's kind of you have this piece, which is on the woman's sleeve. You have this part of the park. You have the trails that we take. It even has the caves, the Indian caves. But you have the Clove, and this is where the majority of the important things take place. You have the East Road, you have a V, so it's pretty incredible going east. Now, narrow concrete road. This is the East Road. So, I mean, it passes along the Bird Refuge, the branch of the road, go east on the road, of the branch. I'm going brain dead a little bit on this right now, but all these words are in the actual verse connections. So, I mean, how much influence did this book have on this particular thing and this particular location, and why he used it? I think quite a bit, in fact. So we have the dragon, we have triangle, we have the topographical map, we have Henry Hudson's Half Moon, we have the treasure. There's a compass here too. Okay, but let's get into that in a minute. So simple roots, now in rhapsodic man soil. Let's focus on that. Okay, rhapsodic man soil. Well, here's the Japanese hint. I tried to translate directly emotional, romantic, poetic, but it won't take us anywhere. Instead, think of a famous song from the word rhapsodic. The word rhapsodic from a famous song. When you do that, you can tell the rhapsodic man is the man who wrote that song. Okay? Now that second piece is amazing. Now, there's two people this could be, in my opinion. And I'm going to talk about both of them. Both of them have amazing connections to Manhattan. Both of them are rhapsodic. Both of them make songs. Both of them have connections to Russia. So let's talk about the first one. And most people actually think this first one makes a lot of sense for their locations and just in general. And who is that? George Gershwin, Rhapsody in Blue. And Rhapsody Blue and George Gershwin, his music is in what movie? Manhattan, which is created by Woody Allen, right? And I think it actually opens up in Rhapsody in Blue. So Rhapsody in Blue, George Gershwin, Manhattan. So in rhapsodic man soil. So soil of Manhattan, Rhapsody. Well, George Gershwin. Let's move forward here. Once again, Manhattan, 1979. So it came out, right before, a few years right before the secret was created. So very good chance it could be it, right? Now he lived here on 318 or 316 West 103rd Street. Now that's about 5, 6 miles away. About 6.5 miles away from Inwood Hills. This was in 1925 to 1931. So this is where it was, right here. So 6.7 miles. Sorry, Inwood Hills. Actually, Inwood Hills starts here, so it's about 6.5 miles away where he lived. So very well could be him, right? That's a great connection there. And George Gershwin, household name, everybody knew him. Rhapsody in Blue. So I mean, why not? Had a big influence on the New York City music portrait, not just in the movie Manhattan, but I'm sure in many different places all throughout Manhattan that probably played that music. George Gershwin was very well known. And Russian connection, I mean, his family's from Russia, right? Jewish immigrants, his parents, his Imperial Russian Army, his paternal grandfather, his popularity in Russia, huge, immense. Musical operas, ballets, notable. I mean, it's just amazing connections. So yeah, fine. It could be Gershwin. I'm I'm not going to argue. It could very well be Gershwin. But that being said, there's some verbiage in another song, and once again, the hint given by the Japanese clue basically says when you know the song, you'll know who it's written by. Well, who could that be? And how do they have such connections and similar connections to Manhattan, to Russia, to rhapsodic man soil? Well, Walt Whitman and Song of Myself. Now, some of you are like, what? What are you talking about? Well, he was born in this area. Well, technically, Long Island. However, let's move forward. Once again, when you do that, you can tell the rhapsodic man is the man who wrote that song. Well, you know who wrote this song because it's a song of myself. Song of myself, the song of Walt Whitman. Okay? Now, check this out. It's amazing. Walt Whitman, a cosmos of Manhattan, the sun. Now, what is a cosmos? Essentially, order or arrangement, or physical world and conceptual order around it. Okay? So he is kind of like everything physical and conceptual is Walt Whitman of Manhattan, the son of Manhattan. I celebrate myself and sing myself. My tongue and every atom of my blood form from this soil. Once again, talking about Manhattan. Okay? My tongue, every atom of my blood formed from this soil, this air. I mean, rhapsodic man's soil, talking about Manhattan, giving us an additional clue. This is not only Manhattan, but it's connecting to soil. Beautiful, just absolutely amazing. If this is connected to Walt Whitman, but once again, it could be either or. Now, once again, talking about Song of Myself, okay, what sort of influence did this have on Russia? Well, his word was revealed. Russian artists felt that poetry deserved grander stage than pages of a book. In 1918, a choral drama based on Song of Myself made its debut in the theater. And, essentially, this Song of Myself became huge, and The Leaves of Grass, which is what it was written in, becomes quite important to the Russian culture. Even Tolstoy had Leaves of Grass, which is where Song of Myself is written in. You can read through this, gives you a little bit deeper, but the importance of Song of Myself, of Leaves of Grass, to Russian poetry and to the Russian people. And this is really says it very well. Walt Whitman's influence in 20th century Russia was huge. His Leaves of Grass was a constant bestseller, while his works had a major influence on many Russian poets. Initial interest in Walt Whitman's work developed slowly in parallel with his rise in popularity in the United States. Leaves of Grass was noted in Russia only after its third edition was published in 1860. The prolific Russian novelist and short story writer Ivan Turgenev attempted a translation of Whitman's poem, Beat, Beat Drums, just like later translations of Whitman's work. But anyway, you get the point. So Gershwin, Whitman, your choice. Pick one. Or gaze north toward the Isle of B. Gaze north toward the Isle of B. Isle. Not island, Isle. And gaze north. Well, what do we have here? How do we know where north is? See this little thing right here? Right by the teepee? See it? This is called a Native American medicine wheel. Now, I don't know. I have no historical evidence or anybody writing anything that this was here or still been here. It's been here as long as the teepee. But I would imagine it probably might have been, especially since the teepee's still there over this amount of time. This could have been here just as long. Okay, but I don't have any evidence. So I'll just say that right out loud. But it's telling us to look north. So what's the importance of a medicine wheel? If this was here back in 1980, time period when Byron maybe dug here. Well, the medicine wheel. Cardinal points of the compass: east, south, west, and north. North American medicine wheel: north, west, east, south. Looks just like it, right? It's basically a compass. Directional alignment, compass, medicine wheels, align cardinal's direction: north, south, east, and west. What do we have here? A compass, dragons, topographical map. This looks just like, very similar to Inwood Hills topographical map. We also have right in the middle of it a triangle thing that looks just like the teepee. You have Half Moon, Henry Hudson, and you have the compass pointing to treasure. Now, that's interesting because it kind of falls into my second theory of where it is. Compass, right? We all know this is a compass. If you grew up in my time, you knew that this is a compass. The teepee, my first theory, under this rock. But I thought to myself, that's a little hard of an angle to dig something up. And what do? Lift it up and put it under it? Maybe. I think that's a good spot for it. But it could also, once again, you have this in the topographical piece, which I've shown some maps that show very similar to this, and then the teepee right in the middle, or a triangle shape. Now we'll get into my other theory in just a little bit with the compass, but let's talk about isle. Okay, so we know which direction to look: north. Okay, compass, and what do we have? Let me go back to this. So north would be this direction, or this way is pointing. Pretty sure that's north. Okay, so we would know which way north is. We would know which way to gaze if that compass was there. That's that medicine wheel. Now, isle. What is isle? Island or peninsula, especially a small one. There's a reason he didn't use the word island. He used the word isle, which is a small island. What do we have there? Now, Isle of B. It's important to point out. So, of, indicating an association between two entities, typically one of belonging. So we have an island that is connected in one way and associated with another thing, two entities. Well, what do we have there that's an island? Well, we have this piece here that makes quite the island. Now, this island right here was cut from where the C Columbia Rock is. This was cut like right here. It used to be connected to the Bronx. I'll show you. See this? It used to be like this. This is where the Sea Rock is now. This part that is now connected, or through bridges, used to be connected to the Bronx. Here's a better way to see it. This part was cut off, and now it's an island that makes up the northernmost part of Manhattan because it has some bridges that connect to it. So the Isle of B, or the island that was cut off of the Bronx, the island, peninsula, separated a little island where the nature center is. You can see the water. That was moved from the Bronx. Now it's here. It's still an island of what used to be the Bronx, or this used to be connected to the Bronx. So island of the Bronx. Isle, small island, Isle of the Bronx. We gaze north from where we were, and it would be in the direction of Isle of the Bronx, which just happens to be right there on the sleeve. Amazing. Isle, water separating it, island, Isle of the Bronx, Isle of B. So we've gone through everything. That's my first theory. Just a couple of additional theories here with the compass, and then we'll fly through the immigration pieces and call it a day. Once again, compass, medicine wheel, north. Now, true north technically would be 12 on a sundial, so 12 o'clock, right? Falls on 12. So solar north, true north would be 12. So what is important that the 12 on the sundial points north? The sun is then exactly above the meridian at the highest point of the day. It's 12 o'clock. That's where the shadow would be. Why is that important? Well, because we have a clock. We have a clock on here, right? And if we use that as a sundial, and that was there back in 1980s, and the medicine wheel was there, and true north and north points to 12, and this is pointing to the 11. Well, is this our telling us where to go to the compass? And if that was the case, that would make it about right here. Okay. Now, hopefully, some of these images that I show, because I don't think this is here anymore. I think they took it out. I saw a recent image from 2023, and it looked like it wasn't there anymore. But maybe some of these logs and some of the other pictures that I've shown of this. Well, and I have a video if anybody wants it. If anybody's talking to authorities or have somebody who can help us from the park authorities to maybe track down where this would have been, because this is basically 11 o'clock, and I think if he was going to bury it somewhere, this would have make a lot more sense, because it would have been much easier to dig it and cover it, and no one would have noticed, and he wouldn't have messed up anything in that teepee. So, and this kind of looks a little bit like that, the shape of the bird as well, but. This is a good contender, and as my second theory for this particular spot. So it would have been at 11 o'clock, but I think this is gone now. But maybe these are still here. Maybe you can get a good perspective of where it's located based off of this stuff. And it's going to have a video, and I have some other pictures of it if some park authorities are willing to work with us on this. Another quick theory. This actually goes east. This is another V, and back in the day, in an older map, Henry Post used to be there. I know we talk a lot about Henry Hudson, and everything was connected to Henry. I don't think it's over here. It's just possibility if it's in Inwood Hills and not where I'm saying that this also makes a V and going eastbound. I don't know if there's anything that's Henry Post over here anymore, but the Clove is like more over here. So the immigration, if you know, number 2 is connected to Tartary, Russia, Hungary, and I think Poland area, so the Slavic regions. And once again, in this we have the different fairy folk. These different fairy folk: Laishi, Boliviki, Villi, Vasili, moss maidens, forest fathers, riverbeds, forest tops. So we all know that that's very well represented. All those things in the this location. Why he would have picked it. There's mosses all throughout, Inwood Park. This is a Columbia University study that talks about different mosses. Mosses can also be found in marshes and wetlands. And what do we have there? Marsh and wetlands. We have a last remaining um, natural marsh that's there. Okay, then we get into the different names, which we already said. We'll fly through these. But Vasily is an interesting one. I want to focus a little bit on this one. So Vasily, even though I can't find the right, like I did, but it's more of a recent version, like 1981 version of Vasily. But Serpent King, this is a story of three beggars and a serpent king, which is very interesting. It's an old Russian and Slavic or Serbian and Slavic tale. Uh, and it involves a serpent king, which is also another connection to dragons, right? Which is pretty cool. So once again, the Russian fairy tale, Wonderful Beggars, Vasily, spelled a little bit different with a Y, but you can't find that spelling anywhere except for more, some later published stuff. But all the Slavic, true Vasily is spelled like this, and once again, Serpent King. But this is a more modern version. I think this came out in 1981. So Vasily is spelled the right way, and the dragon. So this could have come out just at the same time or right before, that Byron was creating his, and then you have the dragon. So that blew me away. I was like, oh, wow, that's pretty impressive. So I think this was like right around, it may have been just after, I can't remember exactly the date, but maybe it had an influence on Byron because of the dragon, why he added. Lachey, forest spirits. Do we really have to go too deep into that? Forest, Polevki, the different fields. I think this is one that's more about fields, if I remember correctly, field spirits. And yes, there are fields. We have the Gaelic field right here. Okay. Slavic domovoi, get into that, and it's it's talking about other spirits that are in the. I can't remember exactly, but it does get into forest and nature spirits and things like that. Can't remember exactly where I found this the connection. Fields, semantic fields, abodes, domains, root, household. Anyways, move on. Better connections are some of these later ones. Slavic to mythology of Domovoi, getting into obviously, talking about the ancient worship traditions, Domovoi, heath, stove, do not disturb, mythology. Where is it? Anyway, let's just move on. um, Another one. Oh, we get into the villa or villi, villi, I think it is, and obviously this connects quite well because it does connect the different Russian folklore. This is a part of the forest, woodlands, more fairies that are kind of into the woodland areas, spirits and stuff. So that's where we're at. We're in the woodlands. Rusalki, getting into caves. This is a really good connection because you got caves, you got woods, you got marshes, you got forests. So we have all those. Rusalka, is kind of the same thing. You got waters, forests, fields, all there, and kind of the same. This is the Rusalka. So we just showed that one. Basically forest, fields, marshes, all that stuff. A fun connection to Russia that I didn't show yet. So Russia, the Russian Orthodox Church piece here, but then you have this, and they're like right next to each other. So like I said at the beginning, I think he uses this twice for different reasons, but the Russian diplomatic compound is just north in the Bronx. Looks very similar to this. Topaz is the Russian prize, the Royal Sunstone. Usually for the birthstone, it's the yellow topaz, but I think he used the blue topaz, which is common as well as a jewel, because of the imagery to the water in the area, and the blues make a lot more sense, especially because of Columbia University and the blues and the whites and all that stuff. I love this. The most amazing thing about this is Bob Dylan actually created a song which is called "Hard Times in New York Town." Now he wrote this early in his career, but he didn't actually release it until like 1990s in like a 3 volume set. And but essentially, it's a great song. I don't think Byron would have ever have heard it, but it's kind of connects everything here, which is great. Mr. Hudson came a sailing down the stream. An old Mr. Minuit paid for his dream. Bought your city on a one-way track. If I had my way, I'd sell it right back. And it's hard times in the city living down in New York town. I think that connects it all. I mean, we're native tribe selling this land to the for trinkets. It's hard times down in the city. And so, hope you liked it. We had a blast shooting it and getting out there. And like I said at the beginning, this whole thing, I think the true treasure is just to get out there, learn about these parks, get out in nature, learn about the history, learn about native populations and immigration and the impact on it. That's where the true treasure is. If we ever dig it up, great. That's even better because it'll get more people interested. Don't destroy the park. Please don't. I beg of you. If you like what I shared here, follow, give us a like, pass it to different people in the community, share it with others. But like I said, I do beg you not to destroy the park in any way. Don't dig holes. This is just for informational and entertainment purposes only. And if you want to get connected, there's some different ways. On Reddit, you can find me on different path -secret. So I do take a different path. The Discord, I am the secret, a different path, and I'm in the Discord channel for the secret. I'm in that. I got to get back in there. It's been a while. If you do have connections with the park authorities or somebody who might be able to help us, who has the resources to help us to get with the park authorities and do some searching out there, you can find me on LinkedIn under linkedin.com and Brian Lux. This isn't my day job. This is just for fun on the weekends. But I've been working on this one for about 5-6 years, and hopefully it helps others. You can also subscribe to this YouTube channel, and it's at a different path, The Secret. And once again, I do take a different path, and I would love if you've checked out my other work and the other videos that we've done, and we'll continue to make some. We have some more to go. I definitely want to do my Hawaii one. I'd love to do Houston, and just to finish them all off, get them all done. But thank you so much for your time. I know this has gone a little bit long, but I really appreciate it if you stuck with it this long. And hopefully you liked it. Hopefully you enjoyed it. It gave you a new direction or maybe something else to think about. But definitely get out there, enjoy this beautiful land that we have. And God bless all of you. And just thank you for watching this and being a part of the community.